Hello everyone, welcome to the video on elevator speech. Elevator speech is a wonderful way to introduce yourself or your idea or your business to your stakeholder. That stakeholder can be your manager, your potential customer, or could even be your potential future life partner. Please note that this is a brief speech lasting about few seconds, not more than a minute. How can you express yourself or your idea in that short little time to someone who can make a decision about your candidature or buying your product? That's what elevator speech is all about. Why the word elevator? Remember, we are talking of a short speech. If you are going from first floor to fifth floor in an elevator, how much time will you get? Possibly about 20-25 seconds, or could be even lesser. And let's say you are stuck in the elevator with your CEO or your future customer or your potential customer. How are you going to express yourself? How are you going to pitch your idea? How are you going to sell your product to the other party? That's what elevator speech is all about. You make use of those few seconds. You make use of that opportunity to express yourself, to sell your product or service or your candidature, right? So that's what elevator speech is all about. So how do you go about creating an elevator speech, right? The first and foremost thing is identify your goal, right? What is the occasion and what is your goal? Is it a sales pitch? Is it an interview pitch? Is it a pitch that you make in a networking event, right? So identify your goal and know your audience. In fact, these two go hand in hand, right? So you must first start with identifying the goal and knowing your audience so that you can structure the elevator speech appropriately, right? Emphasize the key points. Remember, you've just got those few seconds. We are talking of 30 seconds or under a minute. That's not a lot of time. That's actually a very short time, right? So you need to emphasize the key points. You can't, beat around the bush. You need to be precise. You need to speak the words or the points that the other party is wanting to listen, right? So time it well. The most important thing in elevator speech is you must construct the speech in such a way that the kind of actions you want your audience to take is adequately addressed. That is the most important thing, right? You can introduce your product, you can sell your service. At the end of the day, if the other party is not interested, the opportunity is lost, right? So what kind of actions you want your audience to take is very, very important. So keep these 5 points in mind as you create your elevator speech. Remember, I talked about interview. In interviews, you are asked, can you introduce yourself, right? For such a question, you can't be taking 5 minutes. You can't be taking 10 minutes. You have to explain yourself. You have to introduce, salient projects, the differentiating factors in as little a time as possible. You need to ensure that the interest level of the other person is enhanced after listening to you. Remember, we want the other party to take action, right? The kind of action that we want the other party to take will decide how you are going to structure the elevator speech, right? What are the other key points that you need to keep in mind while creating the elevator speech, right? The most important thing is time, right? Timing it well is important. You can't take long time. You can't take just about 10 seconds, right? Remember, if you get 30 seconds, make the most of it, right? You must use the time of the entire 30 seconds. No point in taking, 2 minutes or taking just about 5 or 6 seconds. So time it well, okay? Don't mumble. That doesn't convey, or give confidence to the other person. Remember, life is a confidence game, right? So your body language and the way you speak conveys a lot more than, what you actually say. So don't mumble, right? And important thing is you must structure the style appropriate for the occasion. Let's say you are in a networking event. The way you approach the elevator speech should be conversational, right? If you are stuck really in an elevator with your CEO, adopt the conversational style, right? Whereas the style you will adopt in an interview will be more formal, right? So structuring or customizing the elevator speech for the occasion is equally important. Okay, bring about the differentiating factors. People hear different kinds of speeches all the time, right? What are those few things that differentiate you from others? So those differentiating factors must come out very, very clearly. If you are working in an area where differentiation is difficult, you have to put more effort. Even in industries or scenarios where differentiation is difficult, if you put the required effort or possibly more effort, you can come up with areas that can act as differentiating factors. Remember, differentiating factors is a very, very important one, right? If let's say you are a web service provider, website developer, there are so many website developers in the world, right? Let's say you are an insurance agent. There are so many insurance agents in the world. So how are you going to differentiate yourself? So the differentiating factors is possibly the clincher. Okay. Last but not the least, prep and rehearse. At any point of time, you must have 10 different elevator speech with you. Okay. Yes, you heard me right. Not just one or two. At least 10 different elevator speeches with you, prepped and rehearsed well. Okay. Prep and rehearsal is very, very important. Finally, I would like to summarize where will elevator speech be useful. It is very useful in interviews, very useful in sales calls. If you are pitching your product or idea to investors or to your senior management, elevator speech is useful. If you're going for a networking event, elevator speech can be a big differentiator. Now I would like to explain how you can use the elevator speech concept for two scenarios. The first one is interviews and the second one is sales. Let's say you are interviewing for a job. You can apply the elevator speech concept for two scenarios or two questions. They are, can you tell something about yourself? And why should you be hired for the job? Start your response by focusing on your skills and strengths that are relevant for the job and the company. Talk about projects, assignments, and initiatives that you have worked on. Importantly, talk about the tangible benefits such initiatives and projects have given to the organization. Basically, what is the use of those projects? Was it beneficial to the organization? That's far more important, right? So focus on the tangible benefit that the projects delivered. The key thing is differentiation. Why should someone hire you? So you must talk about the unique factors. Even if someone is not asking this question, try to proactively address that point. If you adequately address this question of why should someone hire you, half the job is done. The key thing in elevator speech is to keep it interesting because the other party should not lose interest. What better way to create and sustain interest than by talking about what inspires you? You can tie all the other points like skills, strengths, and projects from the point of view of what inspires you. If you can weave a story and weave a good and interesting story, I feel the job is yours. Even if you are a fresher, I encourage you to talk about your projects. It could be a small project or an academic project. Still talk about it. Talk about the learnings. Talk about your future. Talk about how those projects are helping you. If you talk about projects, it will definitely give confidence to the person who is interviewing you. This is very, very important for freshers. Okay. The next scenario is about sales. You could be the sales manager or account manager of a large MNC, or a consultant who is trying to sell his or her services, right? Start with core offerings. The clarity with which you introduce your core offerings can make a big difference, because I have seen many people not being very clear about their offerings. It leaves your audience confused. Never ever do that. If you have multiple offerings, decide which offering you're going to talk about, right? Talk about your clients. Mention the names of the clients, right? That gives confidence. Talk about the differentiating factors. Why should someone buy from you, right? If you're going to buy from someone, you will have that question, right? So proactively address this. If you can adequately answer, comprehensively cover in why someone should buy from you, I think the deal is with you, right? It's almost like you won the deal, right? The other point I want to highlight is, if you can talk about your future plans, right, as part of your elevator speech, I feel it gives a lot of confidence to the other person. When will you talk about your future plans? You will talk about your future plans only when you are confident about your present, right? It shows that you are not desperate for the sale. Okay? You may be desperate inside, but don't show that desperation. When you talk about your future plans, you convey that confidence. Remember, life is a confidence game. If you can communicate that confidence, you will win. And finally, elevator speech is becoming important even in personal and close relationships. Mobile phones have invaded our personal lives, so much so that we don't have time even for our closest relationships. That is the painful truth. So let's make use of the elevator speech in whatever little time we get with our close relationships and communicate better.